Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Harbor Development Committee. I'm Bill Reardon, the chairman of the Harbor Development Committee. My vice chair is Paul Losordo on my left, who is coming up after a medical situation today. Deirdre Anderson is another member of our committee, and Eric Cashel is a fourth. One of our other members is not able to make it, and one is on his way and is just coming in the back door. So we'll get started. Just to give you an overview of the evening, this is the agenda that we have all in front of us. We'll be going through that. We have some sort of bureaucratic stuff to kind of do at the beginning, if you will. I know most of you are here because of our announcement that this would be an opportunity to begin to look at some of the output from the engineering work being done on the transportation corridor, the Route 3A, Summer Street Rotary Corridor. And we're prepared this evening and have a presenter this evening to give you some sense of that for at least a portion of it. But there is, as you can see, some other business to attend to as well. Ed Morris has now joined, our fifth member, and as I said, one of our members is not able to make it tonight. Because we've been graced with the presence of one of our selectmen, for whom this would be his last meeting. He has been the liaison to this committee during the last year, so I would like to give Selectman Gannon an opportunity to say hello and a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Paul, I hope you're better.
But it's just a hip shot. I just had a cortisone. Just so the general public doesn't think I won't be here tomorrow. I might not be if they don't like what we say tonight, but that's a different story.
Yeah. I should have announced. Anyone speaking should go to a microphone. This, Paul, it's right there.
I'm not used to standing up to these things. Thank you, Bill. Paul, I'm glad you're doing okay. Deirdre, Eric, Ed, I just want to, it's kind of funny. I really want to just come up and personally thank you all for all the work you do. And I didn't really tend to be speaking in a microphone about it, but it's an important committee. And as you can see by the agenda, there are a lot of important issues, not the least of which is the corridor issue. And I know Deirdre's been so active in that with the neighborhood folks down there. So one of the reasons why I wanted to be on as a liaison to this committee is because I'm always been very interested in what goes on, no matter where I live, in Boston and also down in Hingham in the waterfront. So it's been a pleasure, it's been an honor, and I look forward to watching and participating in some of the outcomes of in the future as to what you guys propose and if there are things that go to town meeting. I know we're in good hands with this committee. And I know the trustees who I've come to know and work with over the last few years who are here. I know that you guys are always looking out for the best interests of the town as well. So thank you, everybody. And I'll be here for a bit to listen as well. I'm still going to follow, even as a citizen. I'm very interested in these things. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul. So let me just mention that, as you can tell, this meeting is being filmed by HCAM, our residents and locally controlled television station. We're very appreciative. They've made a special effort to make it work in this room, which isn't laid out initially to be recorded. But Phil, who is acting executive director, I think is the correct title, has been pushed into service by, it's a very busy night here in Town Hall, as you no doubt found when you were trying to park, which was Paul's problem. So we're appreciative for them being here. They do have a couple of rules, and it's the rules that we normally run by when we run a meeting, but they're even more important when you're trying to televise it. The reason we wanted to televise it is that we believe that this content was important and there would be others who might want to see it kind of after the fact. But the point is, unless you're heard through a microphone, Phil can't record it. So he's got this organized with a number of microphones around the room for committee members, a couple of members of the Bathing Beach Trustees who are with us as well. But if you want to make a comment, and there will be time for comments, I do ask that all comments be directed to me. And not to others in the room, and I will control the flow of conversation and ask you to go to a mic whenever you have anything that you want to say. So with those ground rules understood, we'll get started, as I said, with a few bureaucratic matters. We had some minutes that were distributed. This was our March 7th meeting. Ed was willing to take those in the absence of our secretary. By the way, I've asked Eric to be the go-to guy for this evening to take our minutes. Comments or questions on the minutes? There was one minor edit. Deirdre, we'll get your name right.
Thanks.
Somehow. Your mother, I'm sure, in the audience will appreciate it if we spell it properly. Any other comments? Questions? Okay. Motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of our March 7th, 2017 meeting.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we'll launch into the meeting, the meat of the matter, and you know, these are, as it happens, they're all recurring matters, but they're all active matters right now, especially as we head to town meeting. Let me just give a brief context, and then I'm going to pass it over to Deirdre, who has been the member of our committee most active on the 3A corridor engineering work. Just a little bit of context. I know we have some from the Summer Street area, perhaps most affected by this, but this is a townwide issue, and it was a townwide issue that caused Deirdre and others in that area to approach the town and ask that the town consider spending some money ahead of time on this transportation corridor, which is important for not only Hingham, but for Hull and Cohasset and other towns that flow through our town. That was the work begun at 2015 annual town meeting, Article 31, I think, 30 or 31. But I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Deirdre, ask you to pull your microphone closer so that you can be heard, and you can introduce the topic, and then we'll go on to our presenter from DCI.
Okay, thanks, Bill. We're going to discuss tonight the Route 3A corridor improvements on Summer Street, the Rotary 3A, George Washington Boulevard in the town of Hingham. And just to expand a little bit on what Chairman Reardon said about the history of studying the Summer Street corridor, as we call it in the neighborhood. David, if you don't mind quoting. We're going to talk a little bit about the town's historic work on this corridor, what we know about accident rates and the project overview, conceptual design, lane reduction test trial, and questions and answers. I'm just going to give you a brief history and then turn it over to David Giagrande from Design Consultants Incorporated, who are out of Somerville and are the engineers the town has contracted with to study this corridor. But back in April of 2009, with our town engineer, Roger Fernandez,
Who is here with us this evening.
and our town administrator, Ted Alexiadis, the town did study at the time alternatives to a rotary design in Hingham Harbor, and contracted with a different traffic engineer, but that those discussions and those plans were tabled. But what did come out of that, which was very important, the state did pick up on that letter of interest from the town of Hingham in partnership with the town of Hull to study the Summer Street, George Washington Boulevard corridor. And to give everybody a context, I know most of you know this, but when Summer Street comes up from the Rotary and hits the traffic light at Martin's Lane, it turns into Rockland Street. Rockland Street then, at the next intersection, takes a right, and then beyond the traffic light, heading due east, is George Washington Boulevard. So just to get everyone situated there. So the town was able to participate in a study with the State Central Transportation Planning Staff, that's CTPS, which studied the Route 3A Summer Street and George Washington Boulevard corridor. And we got the results of that, you'll see in the chronology. So, but in the meanwhile, based on a rollover accident in November of 2012, the Summer Street Neighborhood Group formed in earnest and met with state officials, met with MassDOT officials, met with the Hingham Town of Selectmen, and over the course of several years, it was decided, we did several things. The first was the MassDOT road safety audit, in June of 2013, which was an important step to identify short and long-term possible solutions to this corridor. In October 2014 is when Roger and Ted submitted that CTPS study, which is a tool that has informed our work to date. And then most importantly, in April of 2015, our Summer Street neighborhood group did put forth to town meeting a citizen's petition. And as a result of that successful vote at town meeting in 2015, the town committed $400,000 to pay for the traffic engineering studies for safety improvements on the Route 3A Summer Street corridor. And that is, you are hearing the first public rollout of that work tonight. And simultaneous to our getting that award from the town with the money to spend on this, the state's transportation planning staff did release their study that they worked on. And we presented on that study in October or December of 2015. So that is on the town website. It's also available on the CTPS website. So we had that as a basis to inform our work. And then DCI began working in earnest all of last year. And you probably saw them up and down Summer Street and 3A surveying and measuring the roadway. So this is where we are. Spring 2017 is a public rollout this tonight of the conceptual plans for what DCI has come up with. So with that, I will turn it over to, we can come back to this. I'm gonna just turn it over to you, David. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm David Giangrande. I'm a principal at Design Consultants with locations in Quincy, Somerville, and Newburyport, Massachusetts. And tonight I have the honor of talking a little bit about the corridor and informing you as to where we are. We are pre-25% design. So it's really a conceptual design. Prior to our first submission to MassDOT, which is a 25% design. So we've got a ways to go. Currently, the project starts at Otis Street. This is the Bathing Beach here. It's just beyond to the north or to the west of that, and runs all the way out to George Washington Boulevard. And here's Rockland Street where it goes straight, and that's off to Hull. You can see the Rotary in the middle here, North Street, back in this general area. In looking at a project like this, we have a number of objectives. Specifically, the objective is to enhance, the initial objective is to enhance safety along the corridor for all modes of transportation. But also we have secondary objectives. Certainly in this particular case, enhancing access to the waterfront and leveraging some of the beautiful, wonderful waterfront features and assets along the waterfront. So we'll be looking at that as we go through the design process. As I had mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at modal equity. What we want to do is have a complete street. So we want to make sure we're looking at all modes of transportation. And that'll include bicycles, pedestrians, vehicular operations. So these are all the different types of elements that we'll be looking through the entire corridor. This shows some of the wonderful assets we have along the waterfront, and this actually is part of the master plan that was done by Presley and Associates. And the idea here is to use our linear project, which is the 3A project, to sort of sew together some of these elements and make them work more cohesively by providing that access, pedestrian, bicycle, and really activating that waterfront. There's been a lot of investment along the waterfront, and we want to tie it together with this project. I have to emphasize that construction of this project is going to be through Mass DOT, and we'll have federal funds available. So there's design criteria that has to be met in conjunction with that. There's specific roadway widths, specific elements, providing ADA accessibility is a must. So you can see we want to leverage all of these existing assets, but design a roadway to the state and federal standards with a local overview and a local feel to it. When we look at a project, there's a number of things that justify or help the state make a determination whether or not they will fund a project. And for this project, there was a number of clear elements, specifically high crash rates. Not only were the crash rates significant throughout the corridor, and you can see here we've got the rotary shown right here, that happened to be over the state weighted average for the number of vehicles per million vehicles entering the intersection. So that is a high crash rate location. The rest of the locations were not high crash rates, but they had significant injury. I think Deidre had mentioned earlier that there was sort of the stimulus to starting the corridor study was a rollover crash, and there's been a number of different crashes. So what we want to do is look at those elements and see how we can make improvements. Excessive speed, if we look at the speed through the corridor from in the Otis to North Street area, it's 40 miles an hour. North Street, east of North Street, 25 miles an hour, and then 35 from the rotary out to George Washington Boulevard. But our average speed in the corridor is 43 miles an hour. Specifically, excessive speed east of the rotary is a significant issue. So we want to look at how we can control that, either through side friction or other elements. The pedestrian crossings. I always love to look at pedestrian crossings and ADA accessibility. This is the main link to the, at North Street, to the waterfront. There's no pedestrian ramp. You're blocked by a utility pole and a control cabinet. Your pedestrian indicator is far off to the left. It's not a real comfortable crossing. So we're going to look at all of those different elements and their needs. These are needs that are assessed by when we put together a justification report. So these are the elements that we're looking for relative to that. Substandard sidewalks. If you look at this particular image here, you can see that the utility pole's right in the middle of the sidewalk. Well, you really should have 4 feet accessible route around that utility pole. So that's an ADA issue. There's a number of other things we have to deal with. Some utilities, the gas utility that's currently in the rotary, we want to put and try to maintain that location for a number of different reasons. Working with the utility companies in a proactive fashion is very important, and it helps us expedite projects. So we try to have the minimal impact on utilities to keep the project moving forward and lessen the constraints that might be put upon the project by the utility companies. So what we're thinking about is a modern roundabout in this case, and we would still be able to possibly maintain a gas facility. The roadway geometrics, in particular that rotary, we're talking about a large rotary and making it into a modern roundabout that has, and I'll talk in more detail about this later, but has deflection angles that are conducive to even flow through the intersection, and slower and just more consistent flow around the intersection, in and out of the intersections. So we'll look at modern roundabout. We'll look at right-of-way issues. I think this is a existing stone wall here next to Stars, and we need to look at that and make sure that we manage things like retaining walls and trees and driveways appropriately as we go through the process. Again, we're early in the process. This is pre-25% design, but these are the elements that we need to look at, and the elements that justify a project for funding by Mass DOT. This gives us a little bit more detail of the corridor. This is up just, I guess, west or north of the bathing beach. You can see here's the parking lot here. There's an existing signal, and we've got a new section that's going through here. We're trying to do in this particular case, because we have a lot of volume here, we're trying to maintain the 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, but this features a new multi-use trail or shared use trail that is sort of undulates along the waterfront and the longitudinal park in here. And we've also added a sidewalk on the, what would be the south side of the roadway in this particular case. So we're maintaining the width of the roadway. We've also added 3-foot shoulders. Now, throughout this project, we need to add safety shoulders. Safety shoulders are important for a number of different reasons. First will be maneuverability. If there's a distressed vehicle, it allows you to get off the road and vehicles can still maneuver around you, and it's a safer condition. The other one is, we all know about, is snow plowing, just for temporary snow storage. And just a recovery zone. Today, with some distracted drivers, etc., we have an opportunity to recover before striking any elements on the side of the road. So this particular section includes the wider shoulders, the shared use path, a buffer in here, and the 2 lanes in each direction. Sorry, I'm going back and forth between a pointer and a projector clicker here. This is the section near North Street. Here's the signalized intersection here, and you can see the rotary at this location. And there's a number of things I want to talk about on this slide. Specifically, we're looking at putting in a left turn bay here, which would be a protected movement, so that the vehicles it would be protected permissive, so the vehicles would be able to take the left turn, clear this intersection, and enhance the operations of this particular intersection. We'd still maintain the 2 general lanes through here, 2 general lanes, through lanes in this location, and modify the signal. Really important as we start rolling up our sleeves on this is to look at that crossing. That's probably the most important crossing to link the central business district, the downtown area, to the waterfront. And that's a big objective of this project. And so as we get into the nuance of design, we'll be looking at those type of elements. As we look at the rotary in this general area, in black you can see out here, that's the size of the existing rotary. And what we're proposing is a much smaller roundabout, better defined, with very specific angles coming into it. It's what we call deflection angles. So as you're approaching this, you know that you can only carry a certain speed through here. You're not going to be flying down through, cutting across lanes and having side swipes. We see a ton of side swipe collisions in that rotary. But with the modern roundabouts, and by properly designing the approach islands, you create a deflection angle that better channelizes you through the intersection or through the roundabout. So that's the objective here. In particular, the existing rotary is a 125-foot radius with almost 50,000 square feet of area. We're going to try to cut that back to a 90-foot radius with only 25,000 square feet of impervious area, right? So there's a net environmental gain here, there's a net safety improvement, and it just provides much, much better crossings for pedestrians, and you can see that there's refuge for the pedestrians to be able to cross. Couple of other things that I do want to mention before I move on this one. Green Street, right now, Green Street comes into the existing rotary where we've made it smaller. We're looking at taking Green Street and bringing it into Chief Justice. And also, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh, the gas, the way this is positioned right now would be able to maintain the gas utility in the middle, so we wouldn't have to fight a battle there. So that geometrically it lays out well. And one last thing. Lincoln Maritime is another potential project along the waterfront, an important piece. You can see here that we've have a driveway and we've got islands on both sides on Summer Street. This will facilitate their driveway, and it's wide enough, and this is actually a painted I'm sorry. This is actually a painted median in that area here, and that'll allow us to pull up, queue, and then pull in if there's more than one vehicle. So we're creating a safer operation at that location as well. The next slide is our basic section. This is a section that would provide a road diet, and what I mean by a road diet is we're taking 4 lanes and making 2 in each direction and making it 1 in each direction. And a lot of people will probably say, well, how can you do that? And the traffic will be backed up into the Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to talk about that in detail a little bit later, but I do want to run through the section now. So in this particular section, we've got a 9-foot shared use path over here. You can see the pedestrians and the bicyclists. Then we've got a 5-foot buffer. That buffer is for 2 reasons. Number one, we've got a counterflow condition, so the bicycles are going eastbound and the vehicles are going westbound, and by the standards set forth by the federal government as well as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you have to have either a 5-foot buffer or a vertical guardrail type element, Jersey barrier guardrail. So we've got a 5-foot buffer here. We've got a 5-foot shoulder, 11-foot lane, a 1-foot left shoulder, and a 4-foot median, a 1-foot left shoulder for the other direction, 11-foot lane, 5-foot shoulder, and a 5.5-foot sidewalk on what is the south side. Important feature here is the potential for serious accidents and head-on collisions in this stretch is significant. And having a median in here, we believe, will eliminate some of that potential. So this particular schematic design does show a center median, as well as the improvements for the bicyclists and pedestrians. Down in the lower section here, that's a section that's taken through in this particular area at Martin's Lane, and the key feature is here is at the intersections, and I'll explain it in better detail. But in general, the capacity constraint is at the intersection. It's where you stop for the red light. And then as you depart from an intersection, you have what we call a saturation flow. So all the cars leave at a different speed. Some people take off nice and slow, and other people zip ahead, and then they merge back in together. And what we do is we calculate taper rates coming out of the intersection so that we can make sure they get back in a nice stream of traffic and then come into the rotary in a uniformed manner. But it's important to maintain the capacity at the intersection because that's where everybody gets delayed. So we're keeping the lane arrangement here, 2 lanes in each direction, plus we're going to have protected left turn movements. And the reason why they're protected and not protected permissive, protected movement means you get a green arrow, and then when it goes to a red arrow and you can't take the left turn. A permissive movement would go from a green arrow to a flashing yellow arrow. It's used very commonly now. We won't have that here, and the reason why, or what we're proposing is not to have it, is because we want, there may be a significant amount of left U-turners at this location, because if you live on one side or the other, you won't have as many gaps, and there may be more U-turners, and we want to protect those U-turners. So that's one of the features right now in this particular design. The next section is further down Rockland at George Washington Boulevard. And one of the key features down in this general area is trying to create a berm or a planted vegetated area so that as you're coming down from the crest and sliding down this way, you don't have the tendency to just keep going down Rockland, that it's more of a deliberate turn. We're maintaining the lane arrangements coming out and going towards Hull in both directions, so 2 lanes in each direction in this section. And you can see the long taper rates to the intersections that provide that. So the next slide is a sort of a summary of the weekday traffic volumes, and you can see that at around Otis Street there's approximately 20,000 vehicles per day down in this general area. And then once we get up to George Washington, there's approximately 12,000. So the traffic gets distributed in a number of different ways. So this section through here, as you're coming down, the numbers change dramatically as you come along through the Rotary and then up towards George Washington. We also have summer count data. And what we find is that in the summer peak, that Saturday peak, we want to look at that in this particular case because we have a lot of summer seasonal traffic. We have about a 20% increase in the volume down sort of west of North Street. And then east, because the numbers start dropping, but yet it's a seasonal route, we have about a 30% increase down in this area. So we're taking that into consideration as part of our design, and we actually are analyzing both the AM, the PM, and the Saturday summer peak condition. What this is the process of looking at operational analysis is going to be the next slide, and this will get into what I was saying earlier about being able to have the road studies show that the road will function adequately even in the summer peaks. But this shows the pedestrians. Right now we don't have a lot of pedestrian crossings. Where it's significant is where we would expect it. North Street at this location, right here, we have in a peak hour we have about 67 pedestrians crossing Route 3A at that location in a peak hour. So that's a significant amount of pedestrian. The rest of the corridor doesn't have a lot of pedestrian activity because it's not welcome. Okay, the pedestrian activity isn't welcome. So. Right now, we don't have a lot of pedestrian activity. When we talk about operational analysis, we talk about level of service. And for signalized intersections, it's based on vehicle delay. So, and it's graded just like when you were in high school or elementary school, A through F. And if you get an A, it's no delays or 10 seconds. And if you have an F level of service at a signalized intersection, it's greater than 80 seconds. So we did the operational analysis using the standards in the industry, Synchro and for the intersections, and Sidra for the roundabout or rotary. And what we found is these provide overall levels of service, okay? And the top line is a no-build condition. So if we didn't make any changes to the roadway, what would happen 7 years from now? We say, okay, it'll take us a couple years to get this built out, plus actually this is a 10-year planning horizon. So we added projected increases in traffic that is from the statewide model that they project and have statistics, and they tell us what the growth rate is. We add those new trips to the no-build from the existing trips that we collected, and that's the top line in black. The next line in red is the build. And you can see, for instance, A and A, B and B. There's no change in level of service at this location, okay? At this location, we have some change in level of service. C goes to a B. It actually gets better because we put that left turn lane in westbound to protect people going on to North Street. So in the AM, it gets slightly better. In the PM, you lose a little bit level of service. So it goes from C to B and from B to C, AM, PM. And that makes sense because we're facilitating in the morning, people are going in towards Boston. They're going north or west in this particular case. And we've got the benefit of that left turn lane. So it's helping us flush more traffic through. So, so you can see there's slight changes, but overall for the better. The rotary goes from an F to a C. In the AM, it goes from a C to a C. It stays the same in the PM. And on the Saturday midday peak, which was taken from 10 to 2, they looked at the hours from 10 to 2, it goes from a D to an E. Part of the reason why that went to an E is because we provided what we call a slip lane here to get people in this direction quicker, more effectively. So that means we have a few more people on the rotary as people are coming into the rotary. So that slip lane gives us a better level of service here, but it changes the level of service slightly. So, we also looked, those were intersections, those were the nodes. We talk about the links, the sections between the intersections we also need to look at. And those are based on average travel speed. Okay, in this particular case, we have a type 3 roadway, 30 to 35 miles per hour. And you can see what it takes in miles per hour for a level of service A, B, C, D, E, F. And I won't bore you with this too much, but in general, again, our levels of service stayed the same from the design year, from the no build to the build all the way through. And I could go through all of these, but I think you can see most of them stay the same or have better level of service. You can see this went from an F to a D, from an F to a C. Back at North Street. We talked about those improvements there already. So in general, the levels of service are working out well. And this is specifically because we're maintaining the integrity or making improvement at the intersections. And on those links, they have the ability to weave back in, and that one lane will carry the amount of traffic we need in between the intersections. So then they get back to the intersections, we have plenty of queue ability, and then they get the green light and they pull back in and then they merge back together. And then where the heavier volumes are, as I had mentioned, up here, they're high 20s, we maintain the 4 lanes in through this section. So, Now, because we're suggesting a potential road diet along Summer and Rockland Streets, we reached out to the state. We've had a number of conversations with the state, and they are considering doing a pilot program. And what a pilot program is that in the summer months when the traffic is heaviest, because remember we said that there was a 20 to 30% increase in the amount of traffic during that Saturday AM peak, we would test it. So we're right now in negotiation with the state to do a test pilot program. And what that would do is we'd potentially use barrels and sort of these, what they call ready curb, with almost like these baseball bats. If you've ever been down the Cape on Route 6, there's a section. This would be temporary, just so that we can see how it actually operates in those summer months before we spend a lot of money to rebuild the roadway. So right now, we're working with the state to try to do a test program or a pilot program this summer. And that completes my presentation. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want to.
Dave, first, thank you. I've seen some of this presentation when it was presented to the safety officials and to Chairman Healy of the Board of Selectmen, but each time I think I get a little more out of it. Dave is helping us to understand mass.speak, which is another language that as over the long time of this project, we're going to have to get to understand better. This committee, in some respects, is an unusual place for a traffic effort to reside. You know, it could be in the planning board in the town, it could be with the traffic safety committee, but because it impacts the harbor front, the town and the selectmen opted that this should be the venue. We're not traffic experts here. We're looking first to our able town engineer, Roger Fernandez, to help us. And then we've gone ahead and retained, I hope you can tell, very thoughtful consultants who can help us all understand what are the issues. And we're hearing from other people. We're getting things in the mail and things by email sort of saying, what do you mean? As Dave mentioned, the traffic will be back to, Nantasket Beach and back to the Fall River Bridge when it's finished. But I think this gives you some sense of the care and the information that's been available to the town to make available then to our consultants, so that, sure, these are models. I think Dave has emphasized that. But they are very useful in terms of being able to sort out what the likely results will be. And I think you can tell from the description that overall, the levels of service would be, on balance, much better. And certainly from a safety and from a multi-use path, all of those kinds of things would also be beneficial. At this point, I think I do want to ask Roger Fernandez if he would like to add anything to Dave's presentation. If so, Roger, you need to go to the mic again, or borrow that one.
Thank you, Bill. I think I would just like to introduce just a couple of more cautionary notes,
Sure.
if I may. That's probably
That's part of your role.
So I want to remind everyone that this is the MassDOT's layout. This road belongs to them. Everything we do requires their buy-in. Working with Dave and the committee, we're proposing or looking at some different options, 100% subject to change. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. That includes the potential tests that we might want to undertake. Anything that we do there requires their review. The town's role in a project like this, and we're just wrapping one up on Derby Street, very similar, is to design something that's acceptable to them, it's in their layout, permit the project, and then we basically take those plans, and then we try like heck to see if we can get the state to fund that through the Transportation Improvement Program. And that in itself can take years. For example, Derby Street, I think we were close to 4 years, and in the project advancement world, that is light speed. And I think Dave would tell you that the average project, and we don't think that that's going to happen here certainly, but in other communities, it can take up to 10 years. So again, we don't anticipate that to be the case here. We think it's going to be much more expedited than that. But I didn't want folks to get the sense that this is something that's going to be under construction anytime soon. That's definitely not going to be the case. The other thing I want to impress upon you is, and David talked about this, is that the models that they run do the best that they can to simulate what the traffic might look like going up, which is the section between the Rotary and George Washington Boulevard, on top of the hill, at Muzzy's Corner. It's like 40 different names to have a location, but and the models do exactly what they sound like they do. They simulate traffic going through that location. Again, generally the rule of thumb, notwithstanding the nodes, is when you get close to 20,000 vehicles per day, you start to look, you're on that borderline between a 2-lane highway, a 4-lane road, and a 2-lane road, and we're at that border right there. The other thing in terms of expectations is when we have traditionally you don't design for the worst case scenario. So when we have a heavy summer traffic that might take place, 6-8 times a year, that's generally not the rule by which you design a road. What we're working on is looking at those impacts and juxtaposing that with what the community is willing to accept in terms of traffic on that road during those periods. Let me restate that. So that means that we have to be willing to contrast what we're going to be okay with, which might be some slower traffic, some delays during certain times of year, and we're still working that out during the summer months, with a compromise that provides a corridor that's safer and overall provides lower speeds. The emphasis behind this project, Deidre touched upon this, but I want to restate this, is that the corridor itself doesn't, although you might think so if you live there, doesn't have that section of road, excluding the Rotary, doesn't have the kind of accidents that would alone, I'm sorry, not the kind, but the volume of accidents alone that would be considered a cluster location. In other words, in the mind of MassDOT, and they look at things statewide, we might feel like this is a horrific, we have way too many accidents. When we juxtapose that or compare that to other locations around the Commonwealth, it's not, doesn't rank very high. However, when we look at the amount of accidents and compare the amount of injuries to accidents at that location, it's not very good at all. In fact, if you get into an accident in that stretch, you've got a 30 or 40% chance of being sent to the hospital. That's reason enough, I think, in anybody's mind to act. But again, I just wanted to make sure I provided everyone with the context, all preliminary. We don't know what MassDOT's going to tell us yet, and we still have quite a bit of work to do to verify that they're going to be willing to be okay with what we might be proposing in the future. With that, I defer back to the chairman.
So, given all of those caveats, which I think we need to emphasize here, these are early days, but far enough along. I mean, we're almost to town meeting. It will be 2 years since we appropriated these funds. Our committee felt, and I think Roger and Dave felt, that it was time to begin to socialize how this roadway might work under what's being contemplated now. So I'm going to open up to questions. The way I'm going to do this is first allow the committee to pose issues that they may have, and hopefully Dave can be informative to not only us, but to others. And then there will be an opportunity as well for the public to pose questions. Again, I'll say anyone raising a question needs to get to a microphone, either one up here or there's a standing mic there. So let me pose to my committee members. Vice Chair Losordo, take a mic closer if you would.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
We've operated in somewhat of a subcommittee format on this, so I haven't seen this before. We've talked about the roadways at various meetings, but not specifically this. Some people on the committee have seen it because that's what they've been delegated to do. I have not. So if my question sounds stupid, that may be the reason. But maybe others have the same question. In looking at the plan, I understand the overall long-term objective of one of them is to shrink the Rotary. And I know from driving back and forth to the Cape, as many people have, that they shrank 2 lanes southbound to 1 lane before the Sagamore Bridge and we all thought that it would make things worse. And in fact, it made things better. That's the good part that you'll like of the question. The other part of the question is, it would seem, I wanted to ask you, why isn't there enough room from Martin's Lane to the Rotary to do that, if that was one of the objectives? And it seems to me that if that was the case, there's a marked difference on the section from Martin's Lane to the Rotary, because you've got other intersecting roads, homes with intersecting driveways, whereas going down the other way, you have very few driveways, if any, and very few roads, if any, till you get to what I guess they call Muzzy's Corner when it makes the big bend. And if you're shrinking it at that corner, that bend, and then re-expanding it anyway for Martin's Cove Lights, it seems to be a little bit of an accordion effect, and I'm wondering why are you doing that, and have you considered the option possibly of just starting the shrinking Martin's Lane to the Rotary? That's it. That's the question. I thought.
So this is this is the section we're talking about. This is Martin's Lane on the right, and then the Rotary is just off this.
I get the shrinking there.
Okay.
I guess I'm not getting it on what Deidre just reminded me is actually Rockland. It's from Martin's Lane to, I guess, what they call Muzzy's Corner.
In this section.
Right-o.
Okay, and we're shrinking it here
Where
as
does it
well.
shrink?
So it goes from 2 lanes here, and you can see this taper right here, and then this is 1 lane all the way until the next intersection where it goes back to provide capacity at the node. So the link from here to there is one lane in each direction.
All right. And that's the part I don't get. Why are you shrinking it to re-expand it to shrink it again? It seems like, why not just let them merge? Is there enough space from Martin's Lane to the Rotary on Summer Street to let them merge?
Is there enough? Can you repeat that?
Is
I'm
there
sorry.
enough distance from Martin's Lane intersection to the Rotary to allow 4 lanes to transit, 2 lanes in each direction going toward the Rotary to transition to 1 lane?
Absolutely. To maintain 4 lanes?
To go from, I guess,
Well,
I guess
I think this accordion effect that you're speaking about, I think that we have to maintain the capacity at the intersection. So in order to have this work correctly, we need 2 through lanes in each direction at Martin's Lane.
I get that part.
Okay, and the left turn lanes.
Okay.
So from there to the Rotary, we want to reallocate the asset that is the right-of-way so that we can make it more pedestrian-friendly. We need to fit a sidewalk in there, and we need to fit in a shared-use lane, bike pedestrian. In order to do that and not have significant right-of-way work to do, quite frankly, takings, we need to utilize.
I get it. Why doesn't that stay the way it is pretty much in that stretch then, the one you have up?
Just maintain 4 lanes all the way out? Yeah,
At least for the test run, to alleviate any, to lessen the concerns that have been expressed about it.
yeah.
Is it not? There's no homes there, there's no intersection streets. I don't think there's this many accidents there, is there?
There's a significant amount of accidents, and this is the fastest, in this particular area, this is where the speed is at its greatest.
They're trying to slow people down.
Right, so it's posted at 35. The speed in that direction going down the hill from the crest is around 44 miles per hour. Part of the idea of this is to create side friction,
Okay.
to make it a little bit tighter so that people feel that they're entering, that there's a transition into the residential zone,
Okay.
so that they start to slow down and have a different mentality about their speed in this particular area. So that was the thought along there. I'm not 100% sure relative to the right-of-way. It looks like it's pretty tight in this general area. See the sidewalk here, and you can see how tight that red line is the right-of-way. So I think we're just being able to facilitate
Jersey barrier or something if you divided it.
Right.
Yeah, I asked the question, you gave me a good answer, thank you very much.
Others from the committee or Bathing Beach Trustees?
I have one characteristic that I like to make sure gets emphasized on the sidewalk on the Red Eye Roaster side of 3A, when you cross from Stars.
Yeah.
I know it's not ADA compliant, but that's also on a blind turn. So any car coming
Right.
westbound doesn't have as much time to stop if somebody is not all the way on the sidewalk there.
So that's right in this general location.
Right,
And
where
also, one of the worst curb cuts around here is right here coming out of Stars. I've had lunch a few times coming out of that driveway. It's,
Taking your life in your hands.
it's tough. So we need to cut back some brush along here, we need to look at that condition, and we need to make these pedestrians safer in general. So, yeah, I've experienced it, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I agree. And right now, at least an interim basis, if we can cut back some of the brush there. There is a wall, I think that's in the...
That was the photo that you showed, that wall.
Right, the wall is that wall right there. So you can see in this general location, this rises up to the wall, and there's a lot of vegetation, so that obscures the visibility and messes with the sight distance.
Right,
So-
and my experience was on the other side of the road, cars coming from the east as well, even though, I mean, that wall that goes
Oh,
across
okay.
the water there, and that's taller than a small child on a bicycle.
So, coming from the east in this
Yes.
direction,
Yeah.
coming around here as
Coming
they're
around that
whipping
bend.
through here. The
Yeah.
one thing I will say in terms of crossing at that location, we'll have a huge improvement relative to the pedestrian actuation, the pedestrian indicators. Often now we have audible signals, so they'll tell you when to walk, when not to walk. In residential areas, sometimes we shut those off because they can be perceived as a nuisance. But in this particular location, you'll have an audible, you'll have indicators and the phasing that will promote the pedestrian at this location.
Alan?
Yes. See you again, Dave. Actually, I met Dave the first time. Roger had me in this interview committee when we were interviewing for things, and for a North Shore guy, I felt that first interview he had a really good idea of the South Shore. And they obviously, merged with Polaris, which is a firm we have worked with before. So they had a historic South Shore presence, so I appreciate that. But one of the deciding things I found when we actually hired you is of the three firms, or selected you, of the three firms, you got the pedestrian connection to the downtown. I thought the best of the three firms. Because I think one thing we've always dealt with in my prior time in the Harbor Development Committee, now as a Bathing Beach Trustee, is you can't get there from here idea of downtown to the waterfront. That you drive to the waterfront, you're there, but you don't walk from one to the other. And living near the square now, I do walk it, and I agree with Ed. My amusing anecdote, when 9 years ago I first went on the Harbor Development Committee, I happened to be standing by that signal box you were talking about, and there was a young boy of about 13 or 14, asking me if I needed help getting across the intersection. So,
Was he a Boy Scout?
yeah, exactly. So I think it underscores, even a kid that age got the fact how difficult that was. And imagine if you get a baby carriage or something else. But the other thing I'm looking at is you reduce the rotary, Hingham Maritime. Obviously, a number of the kids will walk along that section of 3A. And I'm assuming we're picking up a little green space potentially along the current top of that area?
We are, and this shows a parking lot. This is all within the, there's this green space here. We're picking up a little bit right along the edge. You can see where it's gray and then it goes to green. So, we're picking up probably 10 plus feet, 15 feet. But we're also running a multi-use path all the way down and undulating it right here so that we can leverage the new bridge that's put in here and some of the other features. So that if you're on that side of the road and you you can stay on that side of the road and have an enjoyable walk or bike ride.
Okay, because to me, that's an important consideration. When you look at the downtown area to the waterfront, having one place that you can cross with a signal is, to A, not enough, and it doesn't feel very safe. But I think we should be connecting neighborhoods, whether you live on Water Street or North Street or Ship Street, to be able to safely get across to the other side. So I appreciate the fact you're looking at these things, and they're also the only firm that brought a landscape architect on as part of their team, which I thought was also a plus, to look at it big picture beyond just, and I know, as Roger said, this is a DOT project, and it's getting traffic through here is the biggest concern, but even they have to be cognizant of the fact of pedestrians and bicyclists now. So.
And in their perspective is they need to, number one, provide ADA accessible routes. They need to provide, it's a safety improvement for them. They've got some accidents out there. They want to minimize the accidents. And as Roger had said, the potential for serious accidents, they want to minimize that. So they have a specific agenda. It doesn't mean we can't build into our design these elements and try to leverage the money given to us by the state. However, they may not fund certain elements, but we can design that into the overall scope so that in the future you may be able to just say, okay, we want to do this along the waterfront, and it's already planned out to integrate with the roadway. So that can be pedestrian tie-ins, or it could be bicycle tie-ins. It could be, I know that you're doing a new building along there, right? And so all of these things need to be understood. Where are they and where are the crossings? One of the things we did do is at this location, at the driveway, is provide a sidewalk along this side so that if you're down in this general area, you have the ability to cross at this location, actuate the signal, very safe, nice long sight lines, come across and then walk down. Let's say if you're in this is Ship Ave, right?
Ship Street.
Ship Street, yeah. So if you're in that neighborhood, you can cut up into that neighborhood and out that way. So, you know, we're trying to leverage what we can. And certainly if we can have it signalized, that's a much safer crossing for the pedestrians.
Thank you.
Eric? All right, I think the committee's had an opportunity. Deirdre, of course, has asked a few questions along the way, I know. So I think she's had her opportunity to ask questions of Dave. So of the public, Bob Broker, please come up to the mic. Please identify yourself so that this is being televised.
15 Barnes Road, that's on the S-curve. You see the S, that's not this one, where the S-curve is. I was here for a meeting probably about 25 years ago, and it had to do with that road. It might have had to do with the Martin's Lane issue. And it was a gentleman who lived on the S-curve, and he said that he used to pay for his trips to Florida with the insurance claims he got against the people who ran through his fence annually. And so anyways, we're very appreciative. I mean, this seemed like a miracle that you could even talk about this. I appreciate the engineering thinking that it's improving, that it's thinking it can do something that seemed impossible for a very long piece of time. We've heard the accidents late at night. We've seen the accidents during the day. I just didn't let, my kids grew up and they moved away. They came too soon for this, but we just didn't let them go to the village. You know, you just don't walk down there in the village. You don't have people crossing down by the village because you don't go there. You don't make that trip right now. It's a negative experience, and that's too bad. As the harbor improves, as the roadway improves, we just encourage you to go forward with this kind of activities. We think it's going forward. I am scared to death of watching those two cars coming around the curve and coming at me. You know, it'll be better be one. Two of them coming at me as they're going right now. I think I could judge a little better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions, observations? Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Brian Batista. I actually live in Winthrop Road in South Hingham, and so I'm not on a butter. And I'm just here because I'm concerned about the potential impact of this on traffic. In fact, I don't even drive this way. Typically, if I'm going to Hull, I'm going down 228 or I'm going down Kilby Street. So I almost never drive on this intersection. But I am concerned about the potential. And first of all, I just want to say that this is you may only be 25% along the way, but this is a very comprehensive plan, and it's a lot more than just a lane mitigation or diet or whatever that is. There's a lot of things that are going to make it a lot more attractive to go down to the beach. But I am concerned about the potential complications of traffic-wise of going down to one lane on either side, you know, backing up into Hull or backing up into Quincy or whatever. And hopefully, I was wondering if there's a potential to widen Summer Street so that you could bring all those safety elements in, you know, the median and the sidewalks and everything, whether that would be too costly, but to widen it without reducing it to one lane. Because I'm concerned, or have you thought about, you know, what happens at Downer Ave and what happens at Fotler Road and what happens at the shipyard if this thing is backing up so far that all these lanes are now, all these intersections are now blocked completely, and you've got accidents because people can't get across or people are blocking the intersection, that type of thing. So just here to remind you about the law of unintended consequences and you know, making sure we've got a plan to deal with things that might happen away from the area that you've got designed there.
So as I had mentioned earlier, the arterial capacity is a function of the intersections, not necessarily a function of the basic roadway section. So you have nodes and links. We modeled both the intersections, the basic roadway sections, and modeled the entire length, and got comparable levels of service. We had a couple that went down slightly, we had a couple that went up slightly. The whole idea of the road diet and trying to get the state to come out and model this in the field and do a pilot program was to make sure that you know, that our model is correct. We had a lot of similar questions about a road diet we did 3 years ago. We designed it about 5 years ago. It was implemented between 3 and a year ago. So it was completed about a year and a half ago. It was Broadway in Somerville from McGrath Highway to Sullivan Square. And we heard a lot of these similar questions, and our models showed that, you know, given the numbers, we could provide a road diet and reallocate some of that right-of-way to the bikes and pedestrians. And fortunately, we were able to put in a buffered bike lane and much wider sidewalks. In that particular area, it's on Broadway in Somerville, and it really helped make that area that was, quite frankly, a little bit on the depressed side, a lot more vibrant. And so sometimes reallocating the right-of-way can help in a lot of different ways. But to ensure that we're not creating a problem, we are going to try to get this test done and show that that the one-lane arrangement in each direction will work adequately. So right now our models show it, and we're hoping that we can get the state, before they invest a lot of money, to run the pilot program.
Thank you for your question.
Bill, may I?
Yes, Roger.
Real quickly, just wanted, because there's a part B to that question, with respect to if the one lane doesn't work, what does it take to do 2 lanes, and that would require land taking. It would require taking some of the existing properties up along the side, not the entire property, but portions of that property. The right-of-way through the section just isn't wide enough. The other thing is, and again, this is the hope, we don't have any confirmation that they're going to allow us to do this, but the test, and this will be the first time that they've done it at the district, applying a test like this where we can actually set up potentially cones, reduce the lane, see how that behaves in the worst time of the year from a traffic standpoint, the summer. We would also install traffic counters at some of the adjoining roads, and we'd be able to measure where that traffic disperses if it's not headed up Summer Street. So we get an idea, okay, because of this lane reduction, 10% of the traffic headed off in this direction. So we'd get a sense of that as well. We really hope that they buy this, because we can take it for a test run, so to speak, and it'll be able to tell us whether or not this, or at least give us an idea of what to expect with respect to this.
Roger, I'm going to just reemphasize that, because I know there are a few people in the room who have that concern, that if you have a road diet on the stretch from Muzzy's Corner to the Rotary, that you may have turns off at Muzzy's Corner going down Kilby Street, or a left turn on Summer Street and come down Chief Justice Cushing Highway, which this summer would not have any lane reduction, but it narrows to 1 line as you get to the Rotary. So the point of, if we were to do this study, this test, it would include assessing whether there is undue redirection away from the corridor. The expectation from the models is that the corridor will carry this volume. It may slow down somewhat in the heaviest. We all know if Nantasket Beach empties out at 5:30 on a Saturday afternoon, it's going to be a long ride to Quincy and back to Boston, or a long ride to get back to Hingham. But that's not, the majority of what we all live with, those who live in North Hingham. So I think was a really good point. Other questions?
I just want to add too, because I know anecdotally, as an abutter on this road, that this has been shared in the neighborhood, that there are 2 points along 3A that this happens, and with more traffic than what we see on a daily basis up and down Summer Street, which is about 16,000 vehicles. 23,000 vehicles are on 3A as it rounds by the Lobster Pound, and that does go down to 2 lanes. The same thing in Quincy, Route 3A as it approaches Wollaston Beach past the Quincy Police Station and the Wollaston Cemetery. When you take a left onto C Street, that's well in excess of 22,000 vehicles dropping down to 1 lane again in that merge. So those are anecdotally 2 areas on the South Shore that we look to say, can we handle this?
Main Street, 228, very similar traffic.
228 in Hingham, right, about, what did you say,
22,000 vehicles.
a day?
Mr. Sharkansky.
Good evening. Jim Sharkansky, 32 Hancock Road. I'm from the other side of town, but I travel there a lot. I travel to Nantasket and down that road, as well as down 228 in some cases. 2 questions. First one is, I'm a little concerned with, you made the comment that traveling east on Summer Street, when they approach Martin's Lane, there'll be cars possibly taking U-turns so they have access to the other side of the road. That's a concern to me, only because that's the crest of the hill, so going westbound up George Washington Boulevard, Rockland Street to that crest, and someone taking a U-turn that might not take it as tight as they should, or they take it wide. If they take it wide, they're traveling to their right into traffic that's moving with them. If they don't take it wide enough or tight enough, it's a possibility of an accident there. That seems like a bit of a concern in safety. My other question is this: when or has this been discussed with the other communities, being Hull, Cohasset, Situate, because they all use this road. They all have the need for this road. And I know that you have your needs, but they have their needs as well. So I want to make sure that it's being discussed with all of them as well.
I'll let Mr. Giangrande answer the first part, and then I'll respond to the second part.
So the first part, what I had mentioned in my presentation. At that particular intersection, we provided a left turn lane, specifically a protected movement only, not protected permissive. So protected means that there is no through opposing traffic coming by. You get the green arrow and you can make your left turns or your U-turn, and there's no opposing traffic. Okay, so it's completely protected, it's very, very safe. Traditionally, in this location for just left turns, we would go protected permissive. But in this particular case, we went only protected movements on the lefts and U-turns because we anticipated that exact issue, very astute. That's why we changed the signal design.
Any who live in that area, and I happen to have for 60-odd years, know that the crest of that hill is an issue, has been an issue. It was actually reduced at one point a number of years ago in an earlier effort. As to your second question, Jim, the town is very aware of its position. Route 3A runs through our town, but it comes through other towns. There is a rollout expected to other jurisdictions, particularly our immediate neighbors who would be most affected. The issue here, as always, is, well, when do you begin to socialize and share? And you have the state on the one hand saying, well, you're not at 25% yet, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But it is very much in our mind and very much in our plan and the town's plan that obviously we have to share with our neighbors, particularly Hull and Cohasset, Hull perhaps the most. So we're well aware of that need. Sure.
And I also, as we mentioned, in 2015, in the fall, the Harbor Development Committee ran a citizen-wide survey that was advertised up and down this corridor. And we had, a record-breaking, 1,500 people respond to that. There was a significant portion of out-of-town respondents to that. And that is what informed a lot of our decisions about working with DCI about the Rotary. Because, while 60% of Hingham residents wanted to maintain the Rotary, it jumped to 67% or something that when you added in out-of-towners. So that's another way in which we have included other communities.
So let me just, I think the gist of that is one other alternative, which could still possibly occur, is a signalized intersection where the Rotary is now. Out-of-towners overall, we're very concerned about that because they thought it would slow down the rate of traffic. The other modern Rotary that we all should think about, and I think a lot of us know it, is the one in Situate, just before the Greenbush. That was redone. My sense driving down 3A is it works pretty well and traffic keeps moving. And I don't see huge backups, and yet I think that's 5 roads coming in. It's a very complex intersection, but it seems to be working. The point is that this Rotary, I can assure you, since 1956, which is when I started on my bicycle going on that Rotary, nothing significant has happened to it, and it's time. Other questions? Yes, sir.
My name's Gabe Dutra. I'm on 79th Summer, right on the blind corner across from Steamboat Lane. So my question was, between the Rotary and Martin's Lane, it's a divided 2-lane, right? Where are the gaps that you have? I think there's some gaps, I would presume, on that intersection.
So we haven't established the specific gaps as of yet. We do anticipate having some gaps. I will emphasize, though, so what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of accidents along this corridor. And one of the major causes of accidents is speed differential. So if somebody goes to slow down, somebody's distracted, bang, you get a rear-end accident. So we want to minimize the amount of openings in the median. So we haven't exactly worked that out at this stage, but we are anticipating some specifically for the minor roadways along there, Steamboat in particular. So we'll be working on that as the design moves forward.
I think that's where it's important to say this is prior to 25%. Early days, those kinds of things, there will be additional opportunities. I think many of the abutters are very aware of that. I'll speak for myself, only for myself. There's a trade-off, perhaps, between convenience and safety. And I, for one, also coming into that very same intersection, would be willing to give up some convenience in order to have a higher level of safety. But that's just my own opinion. Other questions? If not, we've been at this topic for about an hour and a half of what was planned to be roughly a 2-hour meeting. Could we, Dave, could you just go back to our agenda, which was like the second slide or maybe the first slide? Just want to let people know where else we're going tonight. It's way back at the beginning. So I'll mention that our agenda also includes tonight discussions of current situation at the Bathing Beach, where Chairman Perrault is going to share some things, and that might be of general interest. I know sometimes at meetings, when your topic is over, you leave. But in this instance, there are some other things that may be of interest, so I urge you to stay if you'd like. But Dave, we can thank you very much for coming. Great presentation, and we're rolling. So at this point, I think I will pass the baton, if you will, or the floor to Alan Perrault, Chairman of the Bathing Beach Trustees. And as people leave the room, let him update you on a couple of matters. We're very conscious of winter storms and the impact of those storms on the Bathing Beach itself, and on the armor stone wall that was installed a year and a half ago, and of the new protective wall at the front of the Bathing Beach parking lot. And we have other things that will be for us at town meeting. So, Alan.
Sure. And Chris, I don't know, are you going to be able to patch in our PowerPoint?
Yeah.
I am. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the first item we want to talk about is the concern some people had about the effect of the winter storm. We had 2 or not 3 nor'easters, I guess, which is not new. It's kind of a prevailing wind in the wintertime. We've been hit there repeatedly. As many of you know, Roger Fernandez, the town engineer, did a beach management plan for us that was accepted 2 years ago by our Conservation Commission. And in that beach management plan, it did state that regardless of whether we did a beach stabilization project or our armor stone wall project, that there would be erosion along the beach. It's a given of what happens. And our sand tends to move. It tends to move from the area between the armor stone and the beach towards the boat ramp. And what we do on a 2 or 3 times a year basis is move the sand that finds itself to the Jersey barriers next to the boat ramp and move it back from whence it came. There have been a few things in the newspaper, I think, some comments, letters to the editor that may have, I think, caused more alarm than were warranted. And to that end, Roger Fernandez actually asked Mike Clark, who works for DCI now, the same firm that David does. He'd been with Polaris when they designed the armor stone wall. And the armor stone wall I'm talking about is on the more northern side of it protects what we call the grove of the Bathing Beach. And it had been a smaller stone revetment that was permitted by the Army Corps 15, 20 odd years ago, something like that, I believe. And the problem is the stones weren't sizable enough. So we designed a wall that I believe has the top elevation of 14.5 to 15 feet, Roger, that is planning for flood elevation, so the new wall was set at that. And the stones are much more sizable. The budget was $100,000, it came in at $98,000. That has done a remarkable job over the 2 years it's been in. And one of the things the consultant, Mike Clark, in writing a memo to Roger, stated that the revetment wall is in stable condition. Some of the stones that moved around were not stones of the Ironstone wall. When we did a transition last year, as many of you are aware, we did what we call a parking lot beach stabilization project. That's where the boardwalk is now and the snow fence. And we actually cut the parking lot back, in some areas probably 30 or 40 feet, which has given a more gradual repose to the beach and allowed us to bury actually a concrete segmented wall under the dune that you see, with the idea of being, again, with an elevation of 14.5 to 15 feet, that gives us protection. So actually the most protected part of the harbor is the trustees, in the sense that the grove and that beach is protected. There was a transition from where they did that to the Armorstone wall, where they put some smaller stones, not dissimilar to the ones we replaced when we did the Armorstone wall. So the erosion occurred in that area. It also uncovered a piece of long buried asphalt that I think had happened from years ago. Many of you may remember, I think it was the winter 3 or 4 years ago, Paul, where we lost a lot of the parking lot. Our friend Dave Fenton had great pictures of that, where it actually was being cut back and we were losing part of it. That allowed Roger and I, working with the trustees, to come up with that as kind of a point with the Conservation Commission that we could kind of design to. So I think that one area has been affected, but within the beach management plan, we've already brought some sand back to that area. The DPW has already made the first grab of sand from over by the boat ramp, which I can also point out is building aluminum more than I can, is now in the study by the state. But what essentially Mike Clark, of the licensed engineer for DCI, said is, other than those areas which were anticipated, we could have some problems. And we have not lost any of the new work we did last year. It didn't compromise the buried wall. There was a picture in the journal that was focused only in the one area there was. That was a wider angle picture, you would have seen as soon as you got outside of the scope of the picture that the rest of the beach was really not affected. And as Chris Daly, one of the trustees, pointed out, he's on the Coastal Zone Management hotline, and Brewster lost a buried seawall. There were communities that lost entire sections of beach from those very same storms. So all things considered, I think we weathered those storms fairly well, and I believe, as Mike Clark pointed out, that it's doing the job it can. I don't know if Roger wants to add anything, but yeah. So I think on that front, and it's something, this won't be the last storm that actually takes some sand away. And that's understood. If you read the beach management plan, it says erosion is a part of the process. And then dealing with it is something we'll be doing for years to come. But for the most part, the beach held up far better than it did 2 or 3 years ago. And the Armorstone wall has performed famously since it's been in. So, unless there's any questions on that subject from anybody.
I think people in this room pretty much are
Okay.
aware of that. So, but there'll be others who would perhaps see this on a delayed basis who may not have heard that. So
Right.
it's a good opportunity.
So I think the next item, Bill, is for us to talk about the Bathhouse concession RFP.
Just a sense of where that's going, where the
Sure.
town is aware that there's an article, I guess now we know, thanks to
Thanks,
Lucy
Lucy.
in the room, that it's Article 25 of the warrant,
Correct.
which is going to be in voters' hands within a week or so.
The warrant's at the printer, but I imagine it would be back here at the beginning of next week.
Okay. So I just confirming for, warrant should be in voters' hands within the next week or two.
And it's red this year, so look for the bright red Hingham warrant.
Oh, geez. Is just, we do a brief, this is a visualization that Chris has up right now. We went through an RFP process for both the site work and site design of bringing utilities to this location. And CHA of Norwell, who again has some history working on projects with us, is doing the site engineering. And Sevi Starkowski's office is doing the architectural work. He's got a great reputation in Hingham, and we are an historic district, by the way, as well. So in designing this, this had to be a building that kind of not only was functional, but met the standards that the Historic District would be satisfied with. We've already gone through that process, by the way, and got their permission. They've given a few concessions as far as we tried to design this as much as possible with, one, New England-looking materials. The plan is to have a cedar shingle roof. If the budget comes in too high, we can use a asphalt shingle roof as an alternate, because the delta could be as much as 40,000 on that. And there's natural shingles on the exterior. Like essentially it's the windows are not vinyl, they are fiberglass, right? Fiberglass, but with a heavy mullion on it, so it essentially looks like a wooden mullion window. So again, they have allowed that in the past, so we at least have something that'll give us better energy efficiency, but still have the aesthetics that they look for. So it's designed, and looking at the top picture, the room on the left, basically the building is going to serve three functions. It is going to serve a concession space, which was first envisioned in the 2007 master plan, and as Deirdre spoke, when the survey was done 2 years ago, still a very popular concept on the waterfront is to have a place to eat along the waterfront. And so that's to the right is the concession space. The space to the left is kind of an L configuration. Jutting forward is a community room. And some people say, why a community room? It was kind of a precursor for us getting the $700,000 in funds we got from the state, because they weren't just going to fund a bathhouse and a concession space. And we've often talked about being able to highlight the maritime history of Hingham, and that's what we're hoping to be able to do in the inside of this building. That space is approximately about 500 square feet. The concession space is about 1,000. The overall building is 2,700, which has gone up a little bit. About a year ago, we thought 2,200 to 2,300, but by the time you do handicap bathrooms and have a corridor, we've designed this so the concession space can be closed and the building can still be open. So the restrooms that would be used by the concessionaire would be the restrooms available for the community room. So they can be closed off so they don't have to be integrated. So that took a little bit of space. And the community room is plus or minus 500 square feet. And it has like an arbor and a deck. That deck is actually over the swale. Many of you, certainly Harbor Development knows, that our parking lot drains towards 3A, goes into a storm swale that then goes through an outfall to the harbor. That deck is actually spanning that swale. And it may seem like a luxury, but the best parallel I can give you, and I had a meeting just today with the town of Scituate. Scituate has what they call, I don't want the Hingham Maritime to be upset, but they call this the Scituate Maritime Center. But
Other towns can have maritime.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's not what we're calling ours, but
Great.
they've been very successful with that. They built a building in 2009 that's a little larger than ours. It's about 600, it's maybe 20% larger, their community room. Similar things, restrooms. It also serves a marina that the town owns. So they have about a 600 square foot meeting room with a deck that's about 300 square feet, And I've been very impressed meeting with them. They have as many as 60 paid functions a year in that building, It's booked almost every weekend in the summer, from basically May to October. There are people using it, and it's used for graduation parties, anniversary parties. Ironically, Mark Coughlin, who is the other person at Strachowski Associates, his wife had his 50th birthday party there. So it's one of the venues that people use for those type of events. They've got a great program as far as how you register for the space. There's a calendar that's online that if Deirdre's trying to book something, she knows if a weekend's available or it's already booked. And so I think that they've given us a great model, and they're willing to work with us as we do ours. And I think the more I've gotten into this, they make about $25,000 a year just on rental rates of that room. And even though our room is a tad smaller, our parking situation is actually superior to theirs. They have a gravel parking lot they share with the marina. So you talk about peak summertime, when the marina is busiest, so is the demand for their space. So I think that's going to be a real revenue plus for us. And then the other part of it, obviously, is the concessionaire. And working with Roger Fernandez, we put out an RFP. And we had a respondent who was a Hingham restaurateur. We haven't finalized all the terms with him. But he has offered us a good base rent. He's offering us a percentage of his gross. And he, quite honestly, is interested in using the community room because he's in that business anyway. So he's interested in the possibility of using that as a function space. And again, Situate's got very specific rules. You've got to be a registered caterer or a concessionaire to use their space. You have to get, if you have a one-day liquor or beer license, it goes to the Board of Selectmen. You have to do it 2 or 3 weeks in advance. These are not off-the-whim type of functions. People are planning these type of things probably 4, 5, 6 months in advance, but their system is predicated on that. What I can say is, part of the reason we're looking at this, we have our town meeting article, we're requesting $350,000 for the balance to do this building the way we've designed it. And we're looking at a payback over the 30-year lease period we may have with this fellow that could be, probably 4 times that if we look at the rental room and the community room. We're fairly confident that within 10 to 15 years we'll be able to fully pay back the amount of money we're borrowing. So I apologize if some people thought we could build it for $850 a year ago, but the $150 that matched the $700 was our match to the state grant. So we got $700,000 for the Seaport Bond Council. The $150 was our match to that. As it is for a 2,700 square foot building built to these standards, I think we have a reasonable budget to do that, and the utility work, which is probably north of $200,000, which is a one-time expense, but we got to get sewer and gas and water and electric here. We feel confident that this is going to be a plus, and the biggest thing I've always stressed is that 6 months of the year, we're going to have public restrooms that aren't porta-johns or something else along the waterfront. I know they're looking to do that at Hingham Maritime as well. The idea is to have regular restrooms, not porta-johns. We have 0.8 of a mile from the Grove to where Hingham Maritime is without functioning restrooms. We're very proud of our harbor, but I think this to us has always been one of the biggest things. The building can support itself. It'll be a great space along the waterfront. The best views are from the community room. You're looking out over the gazebo. I can see this already being used by the high school PTO for prom night, is a place where they could do something. So we're fairly optimistic that this will work well. I know there's some question about the amount of money and the like, but I'm confident that it'll support itself. That was the main thing, I guess, wasn't it? Yeah.
And do you want to just speak briefly about there's another town meeting article that impacts your committee?
Correct. The one other area I mentioned, people know we did the beach over last year. We have not done the parking lot yet. We do have funds to do that. We're holding back doing that until all this other work is done. But we put an article in, or an application to the CPC for extending the paver walk we have, which is 8 feet wide and it's about 300 feet long along the beach, about another 600 feet towards Crow Point. We've heard that a lot from the neighborhood in Crow Point, that if you're coming from there, heaven forbid with a baby carriage along 3A, you want to get off that as fast as you can. And this would be a handicap accessible area, wide enough actually for a bike to be on it. It's not designed that way, but you could. And we got unanimous support from CPC and I believe the Selectmen Advisory for that. So hopefully that will, but it dovetails with our overall plan. And we'll do some linkage of a walkway with this building when we do the parking lot.
Alan, thank you. Good update. Questions? I know many in the room have had an opportunity to hear this before, but some have not. So I don't know whether there are questions over here that might relate to the Bathing Beach Trustees. Yes, please step up to the mic if you would.
Hi, Liz Bunstein. I'm at 111 Summer Street. Just a question about the parking lot, because when we go over to the farmer's market and I have a double jogger for the kids, that curb getting up onto the grass, would the height of the parking lot be changed such that you can actually get up over the curb onto the grass to get across to the gazebo and the farmer's market? Because I've almost tipped over, because there's a chain link, or not a chain link, but there's a rope across the gravel area that leads to the gazebo, so you can't actually travel across that. You have to go up over the curb to get across to the gazebo.
Okay, is that coming from the...
It's coming from the parking lot for the boat ramp.
Yeah, so, and Bill could probably speak to it as well. Our jurisdiction is basically from the grass beyond the gazebo towards the Grove. But We hear you. The concept has always been that this boardwalk is not a boardwalk or a bridge to nowhere. The idea is that it's basically supposed to start along in the Grove and extend towards Hingham Maritime, you know, and that will be one of the things we'll have to deal with. It actually is a good question though as to parking. One of the things we do get out of this, obviously we're going to have multiple uses here, and we're adding some uses that we don't have currently. But the current design plan that CHA has, I believe that's 33 spaces, I think, Roger. So we're adding 33 spaces to the 180 plus or minus that we have now. But I think clearly it's something that Harbor Development will continue to look at.
Well, let me respond this way, because it's a broader question. I mean, and if you have that issue with the baby carriage, imagine
You can't get over the curb.
imagine if you're in a wheelchair.
Yes.
So here we are, and this is why this committee for a long time has been working toward trying to end up with a walkway that would extend, you know, really across the whole front of the harbor. It's not easy. Lots of different jurisdictions, an enormous amount of regulation and permitting that are necessary, getting buy-in from all of the different constituencies, but we're working at it. Last year, we got, you know, a nice walkway. Some people, I've been told, take it up and back along the front of the Bathing Beach parking lot. We had hoped to be able to move on to exactly the parcel you're talking about. We got hung up a little bit with some issues in terms of recreation, looking at a possible play area and how that would impact, and we just had to back off from this year. So this year's edition is perhaps leaning a little more toward the Crow Point area, who would benefit from having a much better access to the bathing beach. We're mindful of the other. What can I say? Stay tuned. I don't have to give Roger's caveat. I don't think it's going to be 5 or 10 years, but it may take a while. Other questions? Lucy.
Lucy Hancock, 15 Amber Road.
Alan, my usual question for you is, when do you think you're going to finalize the terms with the vendor?
Actually, good question. I just met with Ted Alexiadis and Tom Mayo today. They're okay with us actually drafting a letter of intent as soon as the next week. So that, you know, we know the lease is subject to us getting the funds. You know, there are contingencies there. We obviously can't sign a lease when we don't have all the funding to build the building. But it is like a catch-22. We also need his input to design the concession space properly, because if he's the concessionaire, we have to make sure the layout's going to work for him. But our plan is hopefully the next week, Lucy, to have a letter of intent that has the 4 corners of our agreement on what his rent schedule is going to be, what he's going to agree on percentage rent, and what he would pay us for using the community room. And hopefully we'll have those business terms firmed up in the next week.
Do you have any concerns that in the first 3 to 5 years or 1 to 5 years of the contract, there'd be any need to go to the town for any funding for operationally running the building?
Not at all.
Because the initial lease didn't have any rent for the first few years. And
He's changed that.
Okay, that's different.
It's part of, Roger and I negotiated with him. I'm not at liberty to say exactly what it is, but he's up the first 5 years we do get rent. We get percentage rent. If he goes over, he has a low threshold. His threshold is $270,000 what he grosses. And this is not going to be Sullivan's in South Boston, but Roger's found out Sullivan's grosses $1.1 million a year. So I'm not thinking this is going to be Sullivan's, but if the next 3 or 4 years it's half of Sullivan's, we're getting a percentage of every dollar he spends. So he's agreed to that. So if in the first 2 years he goes over where he is, which I think is achievable, I don't think it's going to take 2 years for people to figure out this is there if it's successful. So I'm very confident, and I'm much more confident now in the community room. I mean, almost from day one, Situate has done, and you've probably heard yourself, people wondering, Ted Alexiadis told me himself, his wife's trying to plan like a 50th birthday party for him, and she can't find any room in the South Shore that's cheaper than $1,000. You know, so if we're talking at $350 per rental for the vista that this is, you know, it's got, the best space is that community room. I think that's going to be successful from the get-go.
Okay, so as you get traction with the community room and the vendor, maybe a couple of years pulling things together just to get the operational costs taken care of, but then you feel it's really going to accelerate as you go into the next 5 years or so.
Oh, definitely. And I think we can, well, Situate manages to cover all their expenses with what they get just from the community room rentals, and they don't share any of the revenue from that vendor. So in our case, you know, I can tell you, we're proposing 6% of revenue of whatever he gets in that space. So, you know, we get even more than Situate gets, because we'd get the room rental and we'd get a percentage of any business that was done there. So and they only pay $75 per time of cleaning the restrooms. They have somebody who comes in, watches the schedule they have, and knows they have to come in because somebody just left and get ready for the next one. And so, in our case, the bathrooms are being cleaned by the vendor. So Roger, when he did the RFP, puts most of the pressure on all the trash pickup and cleaning the restrooms is on the vendor. So we don't have a lot of operating expenses for this.
Good, thank you.
Eric.
You said the Situate meeting room is a little bigger than the one we're proposing. How much? What are we talking about?
Their room is about 620 square feet, ours is about 500. So they can seat 50 people, and their occupancy for a stand-up event is 90. I figure ours is going to be like 40 and 75. That still fits a lot, you know, if you're having like an anniversary party or, you know, a small retirement party, there's a lot of functions that fall to that size. And they have some they can't meet either. Somebody suddenly needs, you know, 70 seating for 75, it's not the place. But if you look right now, you can't tell June from September. They're almost booked already for every weekend.
And is there a place to store chairs and things like that? Is that part of the 500, or is that?
Good question again. Ed and I were there today, and they have some of that within their 600 feet. They actually store their chairs inside of it, and their table is almost like an augment on the outside. There's a space you can get added. And I think we're going to have to work that out with our architects, because we're not 100% through with the design. I want to have 500 square feet of pure space, if I could, and have the storage stuff really be ancillary to it. So, you know, but I think we have enough flexibility within this design to probably do that. It was eye-opening to see that, because I'm kind of like, okay, you need the 500 feet. And we've even, in the Harbormaster said, in a perfect world, they would have had a bigger building. But at the same time, it's booked all the time. So I think they probably feel they could do functions of 75 people if it was larger, just like we might be able to do 60 if it was larger. But I think there's a lot of people that fit into that size.
All the chairs were stored in a cabinet.
Right inside the space.
Right inside the space, and there was an exercise class before we were in there.
All right. Yeah, and access, the other thing I forgot to mention is their rec department uses that space mornings and afternoons 6 months of the year. And our rec department has expressed interest in doing ours, and they would probably have instructors. Again, we're not going to make a fortune, but we would get some of the revenue that the instructor gets for doing a Pilates class or a yoga class or something like that. Things that are, and they bring their own equipment, they leave with it, you know. So we see that being another benefit, Lucy, is that, and the rec is very interested in that concept. It's a great location for it when you think of it. And the weather's right, you can do some of that stuff out on the deck. Yeah. You know, and you know, the friends have already done yoga on the beach and things like that. We'll have a facility now with restrooms.
Now, I'm mindful of time.
I am not.
I think it's a good opportunity,
Yeah.
and Phil has explained that he expects that this will be produced in fairly short order, and so there'll be some opportunities for this tape to run, so the people who were not able to be here tonight but are interested, both in both of the agenda items, can see it online.
Yeah, the trustees appreciate the opportunity to do it.
I have a question.
Sorry,
Yeah, I just wanted to add two things. One, just a point of clarification, and another about strategy, because this committee, the Harbor Development Committee, is in support of the Bathhouse by our previous vote. One, just clarification, who owns the management of the common room rentals?
It would be the trustees.
Okay, great. So not the concessionaire?
Vendor.
Okay.
He would not have exclusivity to it.
Great, okay, thank you. And so then my second question regards strategy for this article at town meeting. And because the Harbor Development is in support of this building, there's been a very outspoken critic in the Hingham Journal, some misinformation in her pieces, so much vitriol that it can implode itself. But my thinking with strategy is there was very clear support of this type of structure and a desire for a destination at the harbor in our citizen survey. Is there a way that we could use that data either in a journal response, on social media, to remind people that there is a contingent of the population that doesn't necessarily, may not go to town meeting, may not read the Hingham Journal, but has definitely expressed interest in a place to go at the harbor.
You just did.
I know, but I'm not,
And so that. I think that's a great idea. I actually have Sebi Strakowski, he sent me a draft of it today. We want to have a perspective from inside the community room, looking out. So he's going to do a rendering as if I'm in the community room looking out towards the gazebo and the waterfront, because I don't think everyone can visualize it. And even Bill told me some people had the misconception that the community room's on a second story, and they're worried about the scale of the building. Well, Sebi pointed out at the meeting yesterday, the peak of the roof is 22 feet high. By doing the design we have with this slab and lowering the profile of the building, it's a very low profile building for what it is, and it isn't extremely wide either. But we have to get that message across, and I agree with you. And I think, to Lucy's point, where we haven't really been able to announce the vendor yet, if we have something tied up in the next week, I've agreed, the Journal is very interested in talking about that. It's a Hingham restaurateur. I said, look, I'll talk to you when the time is right. And if he signs something, I think we can do that and talk about some of these other issues, put that new rendering in, and working with you, maybe have a bullet point thing that shows you the exterior visual, layout, and a visual of that room, and kind of explains those points that we've heard that some people haven't got, I guess, even though we thought we socialized it. We could socialize it more.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
That, no second floor. Right.
So it's just 9. Ken Corson, who's slated to be our next, Deirdre, can you get us back to our agenda?
Yep.
Who's slated to be our next speaker said he thought he would be late and hoped he'd be here by 9. He's not, so we'll move on, and if he comes, we'll have Ken speak to us later. Ken is an ex officio member of the Harbor Development Committee. So the item that follows that is town meeting preparations. We've just talked about 3 of the articles that are 3 of the areas that are impacted by town meeting, more on the Bathing Beach side. On the Harbor Development side, there is an article. In this case, it is Article 24, which deals with Phase 2 of the wharf, the study of the wharfs. That's a request for $240,000 to move forward with Phase 2. We're already doing Phase 2, which is actual engineering, design, and permitting work for Town Pier. This would extend to 3 of the other key piers that our committee had prioritized. So that's on the plate. As I've said to Lucy Hancock, who shared the table of contents of the warrant with us, it's an interesting positioning in the flow. It's always the question of, is it a one-night town meeting? Is it a 2-night town meeting? Having been to town meeting for 40 some odd years, my sense is this may be kind of right at the break point. There are a few, important items that the town is going to be facing: Foster School, the leash issue at Bear Cove. These may take time over and above, a very important budget, to be discussed in Article 6. But my sense is we're sort of toward, there are 37 articles, I think, in total. And the harbor-related ones are 24, 25, and 26. So I certainly want to urge all of our committee members to be there for both nights, because I think it may be into a second night. The time now comes to give Vice Chair Losordo a few minutes to talk about a new holiday for the town, a noted day for the town, and some work that he's been doing on that front. This is, I'll let Paul speak to it.
So in reading a book, American Spring, about the spring of 1775, it became apparent to me that the Battle of Grape Island was of more significance than I had previously thought and had more of a Hingham connection. It was more important because it sought to keep the British blockaded in Boston, as the author said, 1 month after the battles of Lexington and Concord and 1 month before the Battle of Bunker Hill. And it caught the attention of Abigail Adams. It caught the attention of the then president of the provincial congress that died at Bunker Hill, Joseph Warren, who rode to the guns and arrived just after the Hingham militia had driven the British away. The interesting component is Hingham had patriots, like the man whose portrait hangs outside here, Benjamin Lincoln, and it also had loyalists, as most towns did. The loyalist happens to be Elijah Levitt that owned Grape Island. They marched the Tories after the Hingham militia after they had driven the British off, burned his barn, and taken away all the sheep and cattle and hay that was remaining, which was most of it. The British didn't get away with very much. They marched on his house, which is the Thatcher Mansion, which is where St. Paul's Church is now, probably intending to tar and feather him. Instead, he tapped a keg of rum. His wife put out cakes and cheese and crackers, so the history books tell us, and they had a party. So this is this happened, as Deidre pointed out to me when I brought it to the committee's attention. May 21st, 1775 is a Sunday. Elijah Levitt and his wife were just coming back from meeting, which in those days was probably 2 hours, which will be a much longer period than the 5 minutes that the chairman's allocated me, so I'll try to move it along. But they ended up, so I thought it would be both historically significant holiday and an enjoyable holiday. And now that our waterfront down at the Hingham Shipyard, looking right at Grape Island, is in fine shape, I thought I'd bring it to this committee's attention. This committee voted unanimously in favor to adopt this as a new town holiday on the Sunday, because being a Sunday is significant and more enjoyable to enjoy for most of us. And it's going to be the Sunday closest to May 21st. With the endorsement of the Hingham Historical Commission, I brought it to the selectmen. They, I should also add, Keith German and the Veterans Organization supported it. Peter Hall, and colonel of our militia, we still have a militia, they actively supported it, and the selectmen voted unanimously to adopt it as a new town holiday. It will always be on a Sunday, closest to May 21. With that, it started to take a certain momentum. Keith German turns out to be both enthusiastic and extremely well organized. He's worked with the DCR to obtain the park next to the DCR, which he explained to us is the Amphibious Veterans Park, to get their use and cooperation. I was tasked with raising money, which I did, and that budget is now already been sent in to Andrea, some of the donations that I've received. I know others, including from the lady to my left, will go in soon. We should have both a historical a proclamation read by, I think, Chairman Healy has agreed to read it. I believe former town moderator will be the moderator of the event. The militia's already planned. LP O'Donnell, yeah, unanimously voted by our committee with the militia. Andrea, myself, Keith, and Peter have been meeting regularly to plan it every few weeks. A lot of logistics to pull together a holiday in 60 or 90 days, and it's working out fine. So at 1 o'clock on May 21st down at the shipyard, we'll have a reenactment, which Peter's already scripting, and we'll have beverages. Will be a non-alcoholic event, but we'll have beverages. Montilios will be making a cake with a map of Grape Island and a few other surprises. I think it'll be a great event. We've been indirectly, we heard that Weymouth was interested, but the little committee, not this committee, but with Keith and Peter and Andrea have decided we've got our hands full this year, and there's certainly this is a Hingham holiday this year. We'll be happy to talk to Weymouth about a larger joint holiday next year, a celebration. And we're excited, and we think it will be historically significant. It will honor the militia. It will remind people of Hingham's history, and it will honor the veterans. And I believe it will be fun, and will bring people down to the shipyard and the waterfront. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. I think when you first came forward with the idea, there might have been a little skepticism, maybe a little cynicism, but it's sort of grown like Topsy. It's great to see that it's been taken up. I know you've had some press already. I'm hoping there'll be more.
There's a
I'm sure.
press release going out from the Historical Commission soon.
Yeah, Mary Ford and Carol Meyer, it's the kind of event that they love to cover for the journals.
And I can tell you, it's been posted up just today on the world-famous Hingham Bathing Beach Facebook page.
Thank you. Thank you, trustees.
The other thing that has happened from an initiative standpoint, we've been approached a while back by a group at the high school, and I've forgotten that. What's this one?
No, it's all of the senior class.
All the senior class.
Yeah. The topic being
They might be
the
divvied up.
desire of the high school kids to have a public service day of various kinds, and they're doing it in a lot of different areas. They approached us, and Alan, perhaps you could just speak to the project that you've spoken. I saw forwarded to me.
Yeah, we got a request from the swim team specifically in our case, but and I think you've got it from a broader group. But the idea that help, like on like a cleanup day at the beach. I just think we have to figure the right time. I think maybe the best time in my mind is probably sometime in May. If in a perfect world, we still can get, as we know by this month, we're still getting bad weather, and we still get things washed ashore. But I think we just have to, between our committee and yours, say what's a good time and what do we need to provide them. We used to do this a few years ago.
Coastal Suite.
The coastal suite, exactly, Chris.
Well, you want to do it at a time when they're still in session.
I'm thinking early May, or first, second week in May or something like that we do it. But I think we just have to get a consensus with them and our own things is that we just need DPW to come by and pick up any trash bags. And when Adrienne Ramsey was on Harbor Development with Chris and I, she used to be the champion of that, It kind of got away from us, so I was really glad to see them want to do it. I think it would be a great thing for us to do on an annual basis and also get some buy-in from the high school of what's there. I know my kids, as I've pointed out a number of times, the times they went to the beach was for the 4th of July fireworks and their prom pictures. And our goal with all of us is to get people down there more often. I think if they're all aware of it, it's a good start,
Great.
Yeah.
It's time for that portion of the agenda that says other matters and/or questions from the public. The public is narrowing, but there's still public here, so Mr. Shransky, again. Sharkansky, excuse me.
Jim Sharkansky, 32 Hancock Road. I have a question. So in the original article you proposed about you had all the projects combined, and in there was, you were asking for some money for a flagpole, which has now been removed and hopefully put in through private funds. I drive through the harbor and I see the 3 poles that are there. There's a fourth one off to the side, that's the MIA.
No, there are 4 poles there.
Okay, four flags on one plateau.
Yes.
There are never any flags flying there. At least there hasn't been for weeks. So why not?
I can only report to you that obviously that park is ostensibly under the Harbor Development's overview. But as you may know, we are one of the committees in town that have no budget and no staff. Permanent staff, so it's all volunteer. Historically, the flags have been put up down there by the veterans agent, Keith German. He, as I understand it, and Roger may be able to give me a little more background here, Ken Corson has some perspective too. Keith is protective of his flags, and the weather has been miserable, including, haven't flown my own flag on Hingham Harbor for the last couple of months because it's been just so windy, you just chew them up.
Okay.
So part of it is, I think, staffing, because it's Keith. I mean, he doesn't have a lower level person, and part of it has been he's choosy about when he puts them up.
All right. I just find it odd. Weather shouldn't be an excuse to put up the American flag. It flies at a fort at a military base, at a military installation during the day, no matter what the weather is. There is a squad that will come out and bring it down at night with a whole ceremony, put it up in the morning with a similar ceremony. But weather shouldn't be the issue about why a flag doesn't fly.
Could I make a suggestion to you?
Sure.
I think the place to appeal to this. Mike might well be the Veterans Council.
Sure, I just didn't, I keep driving by and seeing
Yep.
you
No,
know, the
I-
empty flagpoles, and I'm like, well,
I've been-
why would we get another flagpole that doesn't have a flag on it?
Been mindful myself,
Okay.
Jim, it's an issue. And you're right, as I understand it, in the end, I think our harbormaster believes he has, has or can identify sources so that the fifth flagpole, so we would be able to display all 5 services
Not a
there.
problem. I think if funding was needed to raise money to get an appropriate American flag in all the different armed forces, knowing the history of this town and the people in it who are veterans or support the
It
military.
would be done very
quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy, please come to the mic again.
Sorry. This is just a reminder that if you haven't set your speakers for town meeting, to do so that you have, if you need to speak, and assuming you're going to speak on probably all 3 of the articles, somebody will speak, figure out your primary, secondary, if someone from the advisory committee is going to speak for you, if there's, and we'll be talking about that at our Tuesday meeting as far as who would speak for majority, minority opinions. But you need to be able to tell the moderator who will be speaking so that he'll be able to say, oh, Alan's going to speak or Bill's going to speak. He likes to have a little list of who's expected. So I assume the 2 of you would speak. If there's somebody else too, then.
It's pretty clear to us that Alan and Bill will likely be the spokesman.
But there may be others.
Lucy, I'm aware. I got, Sharon Petty's been very professional as usual, and sent us the notice saying the meeting with the moderator is going to be at 1 o'clock on the Sunday before, and also mentioning if we have any materials that we need PowerPoint for.
The template
so
for the slides. Good. I assumed you were, but.
Yeah. And an advisory committee member and chair myself. I remember the drill.
I thought you would. Okay.
We have that, and now it is something you and I will
Thank
be
you.
coordinating something.
But could there be an opportunity to ask the moderator at some point, if there's anyone making general announcements, to mention the Battle of Grape Island Day on May 21st and to invite the town?
I think that's the kind of thing that, we could ask the moderator at that session that afternoon. That's a Sunday afternoon. I am actually conflicted on it, and I'm going to ask Alan and maybe Deirdre and Paul to attend that. We will have sorted out who our speakers are going to be. It will be me for Article 24. Alan, you would have Article 25, and Roger, I'm assuming 26, which is now called additional road building. That will be either the selectman or yourself if need be. Is that the plan? This is for the what was originally the portion regarding Downer Avenue and Martins Lane.
Well, it could be, but the only hang-up with me is that it requires action by town meeting just to allow me to get up and speak because I don't live in.
You typically attend it.
I'm typically there, so typically I work something out with the selectman's office.
Lucy, we'll need to coordinate that with your committee as well, because I don't know in that instance, I don't remember the vote, whether it was, whether there were naysayers and those who were recorded. But I would think that might be the kind of article that either the liaison from the advisory committee might be the initial spokesperson, and then, if necessary, draw in the town's professionals.
I believe that Article S, which is 25, was the one that had the 9 to 5 vote. I think the seawalls, additional highway work was unanimous.
Both?
And
Both of them?
I think the other one, I have it here in my notes, but I think the wards were unanimous as well.
The wards, I know,
The
was
only one that was a split vote was
the
the
Bathhouse.
When will we, you said Tuesday we'll know whether or not you anticipate somebody from advisory speaking on any of these articles?
Well,
No, they'll identify which ones, Roger. They always have.
Yeah, I've been towards me. But I'm asking.
Tuesday's meeting will be is our advisory.
Please, sorry to be.
Jim Sharkansky now as advisory committee. Tuesday's meeting is an advisory committee meeting.
Yeah.
There we will discuss amongst ourselves, as we took the votes for warrant articles, those who chose to vote in the minority, for or against, whether it was a minority, had the choice to be recorded. And that gives them the opportunity, if they wish, to speak at town meeting. And that's when we'll ask those that voted in the minority, got recorded, do they want to speak? And then, if we have, like in the Bathhouse, 9 to 5 split, not all 5 people in the minority are going to speak. It's usually one person, the 5 of the dissenters or minority will get together and decide who will do the speaking. We just need to give Jim an idea of who might be speaking, and then obviously when we go to this town moderators meeting on that Sunday before town meeting, he'll have it on a script, so he'll know exactly who to call on.
Right, so, and sometimes, if you don't speak at all, in some cases with respect to unanimous, so it's my point.
Right, so if it's unanimous, there's nobody going to speak. The town moderator is going to say, here's the warrant, here's the recommendation. It was voted 11 or 14 to 0 unanimous.
Right. But the reason why I asked that, understanding the process, is that if the goal of this committee is to be prepared, just to understand if you guys know on Tuesday, it would be good to know before Sunday's meeting with the moderator to know
who from us will be speaking.
Who's going to speak, so we can let these folks know.
She can ask Jim to provide you with who will be speaking and what articles. Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Our last agenda item, as always, is choosing the next meeting. And it gets a little dicey because, from my perspective, just because of some travel issues. I want to try to get this out, particularly to Tom Coveney and to Corson, so that we get higher, and Brian Panisi could not make it tonight, I guess.
Yeah, a little problem at home.
So I looked at calendar, and the date that was possible for me is Wednesday, May 3rd, which is about a month from now, or Tuesday, May 2nd. Schedules for the committee members that were here?
Either day.
Either day.
It's just do Tuesday.
You could just do Tuesday. Ed?
I can do either day.
You're good. I think Tuesday is better for Ken, so let's agree on Tuesday the 2nd. And Eric, you make sure to capture that. We didn't at the last meeting initially anyway. All right, well, this has been a great session. Roger, I'm very pleased in terms of being able to begin to socialize this tremendous amount of effort that you and Deirdre and DCI have done on this project. We did have some people who had, I think, some serious questions, some who had questions before David's presentation and didn't ask them because I think they were answered in his presentation. So again, I'm hopeful and thankful for Phil and HCAM TV to have captured this so that we can get it edited and on the website so people can see it. For that, as I mentioned, and now this is for you as well, HCAM needs the slide deck in order to be able to integrate the slides with the talk. Okay. So if people are speaking to a particular slide, if they have the deck, they can do dual screen or alternate it. Yeah. And we do have permission from from Roger to have David share his stick. So I don't know, do we still have that, or did he take it with him?
He took it. We have it.
Okay. So any other questions to come before the meeting, or matters? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good night to those who see this later.